What's going on, guys? In this video, I am going to compare the difference between the abandoned cart flow and the abandoned checkout flow, go over a few of the just pros and cons of each, and then also give you some tips for setting up both of these flows. So really quickly, in case you're not aware of what the difference is, because a lot of people I notice use the terms interchangeably. So a lot of times people will call their abandoned cart flow abandoned cart, or they might call it an abandoned checkout, but 90% of the time when people use either one of those terms, they're actually referring to the abandoned checkout flow, and they don't realize that there is another flow that's unique to just abandoning the cart. So what this means is if you look at the sales process on an e-commerce website, whenever someone adds the product to their cart, but they don't go to the checkout, they haven't even taken the first step of the checkout yet, they just have products in their cart, and then they leave the site, and then you have a flow that's set up to send them emails about the items they left in their cart. That's a true abandoned cart flow. And then what most people refer to as an abandoned cart flow is really an abandoned checkout, which means that they've added items to their cart, then they've taken the first step of the checkout process where they put in at least their email address, and then they've gone to the next step where they get the shipping information, or however you've got your checkout process set up, but they've already initiated that checkout process. And then if they don't go forward and they leave the site, or they just don't go forward, maybe they left the site open, then those people would receive the abandoned checkout emails. And again, that's what most people call abandoned cart. So these are actually two separate flows, and you really want to have both. So really quickly, when it comes to the abandoned checkout, again, the one that everyone calls abandoned cart, but is really abandoned checkout, just, looking at some of the pros and cons. So the advantages of this flow is that new leads can opt into this flow, meaning that people who have never signed up for your email marketing before, when they put in their email address in your two-step order form, they can actually opt in to your email marketing and start getting these emails. So you can send these emails to people who have never signed up before. Another advantage is that they're only one step away from making the purchase. So they're very easy to convert because these people were just right there. So, I don't know if it was, they just got distracted and they stopped, or maybe they didn't like the shipping costs, or maybe they didn't have their card information on them and they had to go to another room and they just ended up forgetting it, whatever. There's a million things that could happen, but they were just right there on the edge. So they're very easy to convert into a purchase because of how close they already were to making that purchase on their own. And then lastly, one of the big advantages of this flow is that it's super easy to set up. If you're using Klaviyo and Shopify, then with the integration between Klaviyo and Shopify, the flow is already ready to go out the gate. You just have to edit the content that's in those emails, and you can turn it on and you're good to go. And as far as cons or disadvantages, honestly, I don't really think there are. I think this is an essential flow that you want to have. You can choose if you want to be less or more aggressive with this flow, if you just, don't want to annoy people by sending these kind of emails, but they are a great way to get a lift in revenue. They're super easy to get set up. So there's, to me, no downside to having this flow turned on. Now for the abandoned cart, to go over a few pros and cons. So a few pros: for one, not a lot of brands are using this flow. So most people don't even know that this unique flow exists. So it's just giving you an opportunity to do something that a lot of your competitors might not be. And it does add a lot of revenue to your business. It tends to be one of the higher performing flows for any Klaviyo account. Another thing is that just because of that, it adds more follow-up to your sales process. And what you'll find over time, the beauty of having these systems like email and SMS and other follow-up systems, is that a lot of your sales are not going to come from people who just show up on your site and they go through the full sales process on their own. It's going to come from the follow-up, whether it's follow-up with email and SMS or it's follow-up with retargeting ads. A lot of your sales are going to come from follow-up by following up with warm leads. And that's the last thing I want to mention here for the pros, is that these people, while they weren't already at the checkout process and just right there, they're still very warm leads who are actively shopping. They've already added items to their cart. Again, these are people who are pretty easy to convert into a sale just because they were already so close to doing that. But I do want to mention a couple of downsides with the abandoned cart versus the abandoned checkout. The first one is that they have to already be subscribed before they can get these emails, because just by going to a site and adding products to their cart, that doesn't opt them into your email marketing in any way. So this is only going to send to people who who are currently on your list. So that's one downside. Of course, one advantage to that is that the people who are receiving these emails are likely a lot more familiar with your brand and have hopefully already been nurtured through all the content you've been sending them. So again, these are people that it's pretty easy to get sales from this flow. Another downside, which is not a huge deal, it's just an extra step you have to take, is that if you're using Klaviyo with Shopify or whatever software you're using, you're going to have to add the added to cart metric, which is pretty simple to get set up. Klaviyo has a free guide that shows you how to do it. It's just adding a little snippet of code in your theme, and it's usually pretty simple. If you have a totally custom theme, then you might have to add the code in a different spot and add a couple of extra little snippets of code to it. But either way, it's usually you can get it set up in like 5 to 10 minutes, and it's a pretty easy thing. But it does require, again, an extra step that you don't have to do typically with the abandoned checkout flow. So I just wanted to mention that there. Now, a few tips for getting these set up, and especially if you're going to be using both of these flows and have them both active at the same time. The first thing is, if again, I'm speaking about using Klaviyo. If you're using other software, you have to figure out what functionality they allow for this. But in Klaviyo, it's pretty easy to add flow filters that prevent people from getting emails from both flows. So you can set it up to where if people are in the abandoned cart flow, that they don't receive the emails anymore if they have taken the next step and they've started the checkout. So you always want to be doing that when you look at your sales process and you're going down the line of the steps they take towards a purchase, is that if they go into the flows that are closer to the sale, you don't want them to continue getting the emails from the previous flows, because then they're just getting a bunch of emails all at once and it's really annoying. The other thing is you might have different offers in the two different flows, and you don't want to be just, it just kind of, for one, decreases the value of whatever offers you are putting out there if you constantly have all these different offers running at the same time. And again, it's just confusing to people. It's not a good customer experience. Another thing is in the CTA button, you want to make sure that you link to the cart or the checkout, depending on which flow you're using, instead of just linking to the product. So if it's an abandoned cart flow, when you show them the product, that's going to link to the product. But when you have the CTA button, it might say, go back to your cart or whatever. You want that to actually link to the cart. So that way, whenever they go back to your site, they're back in the cart and they're even closer to completing the purchase, because the fewer steps you create for them, the easier it's going to be to get those conversions. Same thing with the abandoned checkout flow. You want to send them to the checkout page. Don't send them back to the product. It's just going to be easier for them, and you're going to be able to get more sales that way. Now, when it comes to the content of these two flows, the content strategy is really pretty similar. I mean, you already know that they're interested in these products. You know what products they're interested in. They were very close to buying them in both cases. So usually the content, the messaging, the angles are going to be pretty similar, except, like with the cart, you might use some language that specifically refers to the cart. Same thing with checkout. You might say something specific about where they are, but in general, as far as, where they are in the sales process and, the extra information you want to provide them to help make the decision easier, whether it's reviews or if you have a great, money back policy or whatever, these other things that are going to help them, just going to help add trust and help make an easier decision for them to buy. Those are the things that are going to be present in both of these flows. The one thing you want to keep in mind is that even though these flows are pretty similar from a content strategy perspective, you do want to make sure the content is unique in each of these flows, because again, you want your emails to always feel fresh when people see them. You don't want them to feel like they're seeing the same thing all the time. So you do want to make sure the emails are unique from each other, that they look a little different, and that they have different copy, of course. And the last thing I want to close on here is just talking about some of the offers, some potential offers you can use in these flows. Now, you don't have to include an offer for a discount or anything in these flows. Again, the people are so close to the purchase that just the reminder a lot of times is the subtle nudge that people needed, or in some cases, not so subtle nudge that people needed to complete the purchase. But if you are going to add an offer, there's some different ways you can do it. So, I mean, you can just come straight out the gate and offer the email right away in email one, or you can delay the offer. So where maybe you send 1 or 2 emails reminding them of the product that they left in their cart or at checkout, and then you present present the discount later on in the flow. And what that does is that a lot of people will actually buy without the discount. So this allows you to increase your sales without giving up the discount. And then for the people who need a little extra convincing, you show up with that surprise discount and then you get more sales there. And yes, usually what we see whenever we take that approach is email one will get a decent amount of sales without the discount, but we usually of course going to see more sales as we start to push the discount offer. Another way you can do this is you can split your flow based on order value. So if people have an order value below a certain amount, maybe they don't get an offer, maybe you don't want to give them a discount, or maybe they get a different offer. So maybe they only get free shipping or they get a smaller discount. And then when people are over a certain value, maybe they actually get a discount, maybe they get a bigger discount, maybe they already automatically qualify for free shipping. And so you can highlight the free shipping plus the discount. So that's one way you can do it, is differentiating how you present these offers based on their order value. Another way would be based on a type of customer they are. So it could be that you only want to use coupons to incentivize new customers. So you would only show the coupons to people who have never purchased before, or maybe they've never made more than 2 purchases before. And then people who have gone beyond that threshold where you don't want to be discounting anymore, they don't see the emails that have discounts in them. Or it could be the other thing. It could be that as people become more and more repeat customers, you want to change it up to where they get better offers over time and you're really rewarding your VIP. So there's different ways you can do that, where you can base your offers based on the type of customer they are. And let's see here. So yeah, I covered everything here in my notes. And so another thing here actually is to increase the offer over time. So this is something where it could be where maybe you start out email 1 has no discount, then maybe email 2 has a really small discount, and then maybe you get further along and then you up the discount even more. And what this does is, again, it's just trying to get people to buy at the highest margin for you possible. And as you go along, it's, the thinking there is that you're just trying to increase the sales from people who weren't going to buy unless you discounted more. So some brands are okay with doing bigger discounts just to get more sales, and other brands don't want to do that. They don't want to devalue their brand and they don't want to giving up margins. So again, another option you can consider. Now, all that said, even though this is kind of framed as a comparison between abandoned cart and abandoned checkout, if you're an e-commerce business, you should definitely have both of these flows going. And if you only have one and not the other, you're potentially missing out on a lot of extra revenue.